Hi everyone, my name's Amanda, and today we are going to be talking about Supernova by Marissa Meyers. Now, this is the third book in the Renegades trilogy. I do have all three here. So far, I really loved the series. The first book, Renegades, I gave 3 stars. It was certainly not the best. Second one, solid, very solid 4.5, almost a 5. I love this book. This is the best of the trilogy. And then the third book, which I actually just finished this morning, I'm still debating between a 3 and a 3.5 on this book. And let me talk about why. Now there will likely be spoilers in this video, so if you don't want to know too much about it, if you just want to know the bare minimum, turn off right now. If you don't mind some spoilers, we are going to have a little chat about Supernova. Now, the first book in the series, as I mentioned, Renegades, I gave 3 stars. I think it was a very solid setup to this series. I love the characters in these books. All 3 of them, they have excellent characters. They're really interesting, it's entertaining. It's different than everything I've read before. YA superhero novel, except it focuses a lot more on the characters and their own struggles rather just on their superhero powers and what they can do with them. In the concluding novel, I was so excited after I read Arch Enemies last year. Like I said, solid 4.5, almost a full 5 stars. I was so excited for this third book to come out. I fell in love. I've never loved a Marissa Meyer book as much as I loved Arch Enemies. It has certainly the superhero elements. It has good versus evil. World building is really interesting. The characters are all varied and fascinating. And it focuses a lot on the characters and character growth. And I love that. So I was so excited when this book came out. I was hoping I would love it just as much as Arch Enemies. And for the first, probably 50%, the first half of this book, absolutely adored it. I felt positive that it was going to be a 5-star read. We went back straight into the story with Nova thinking that her alias, that her time with the Renegades was up. They had the helmet. They thought they were getting her uncle back. Since they had got Ace Anarchy's helmet back, they thought that they were going to defeat the good guys and live happily ever after. But then Ace gets captured by the Renegades. Nova has to go back to working with them. She has to keep up her alias and everything, trying to get her uncle back. Unfortunately, what happens is she gets sent to the same prison as her uncle. They think that she is Nightmare, even though she really is. It ends up one of her allies proves that she isn't. Proves, air quote. So she's freed, she's sent back, she starts working with the Renegades again. Except she's still trying to free Ace. And the Renegades are trying to take all the powers from all of the villains that were housed in the prison that she was sent to. And so when they go to neutralize them, she ends up freeing Ace. She gets his helmet back to him, and actually a lot of the Renegades, the good guys, end up losing their powers in that fight because of the Agent N. You might remember it from Arch Enemies. Agent N is used to steal the powers from the superheroes. We're doing this in a grand scale. It was supposed to be this huge to-do to show the power of the Renegades and all the citizens have nothing to fear. But then in comes Nova and her crew, our lovely Nova here. Honey, if you remember Honey and Leroy. Honey's the lady with the bees. They end up neutralizing most of the Renegades instead of the villains getting neutralized. Most of the, again, air quotes, good guys do. And it's a huge fight. They get Ace back his helmet. so many people die. And I think that's when Nova starts to realize that maybe this isn't what she wants after all. Up until that point, up until the big fight where they were going to neutralize all the villains, I was really invested in this story. I was fascinated. Everything was moving along at a good pace. It had a very good pace. And then things kind of went downhill for me. The characters it's like they stopped acting like themselves. I'm not quite sure how to explain it. Like a lot of the people in that fight were neutralized. A lot of their powers were taken, and most of them didn't seem to care. The characters were saying, oh, I don't need my powers to be super. I don't need my powers to do good. I'm still a hero. And, that's an awesome sentiment. It's amazing. And I think it says that even the common person can do good. They can do the right thing. But in context of the story, it felt false. Everything had focused around these characters using their powers to make the city better, to make the world better. And whenever they tried to say that losing their powers didn't bother them, it really felt false. I know most of them were probably just trying to be brave and continue on, but it interrupted the flow of the story for me because it felt untrue. I would think that if I had superpowers and could do these amazing things like fly or throw gems at people or whatever, like Ruby, if you remember Ruby, her blood turns into rubies, into gems that she uses to fight. And she loses her powers, and she acts like nothing's wrong. And it felt really false. I could not get past that. The story, I think, would have been a lot richer if it had shown some of the struggles the characters went through after losing those powers. It made sense in the grand scheme of things. They had to figure out who they were without their powers in order to defeat Ace, but it didn't show that part. It just completely skipped any struggles or feelings they might have had about it, and I think that was a bad choice personally. But one thing I definitely can't fault this book for was the battle at the end. We've all read books with a huge battle at the end, good versus evil. Fate of the universe is at stake. I feel like this book did that very well. The characters, good and bad, coming together to clash, powers, no powers. Everyone's trying to do what they think is best. And at that time, they realize that Ace does not have their best interests at heart, no matter how much he tries to convince him that he does. He's serving his own self-interest and is just trying to get people to go along with him. Once they realize that, the story really starts to come together. That's probably the last quarter of the book. So another quarter of it, I hated. So I love the first part. The last quarter of the book, maybe 15% or so, I guess, instead of quarter, where the big battle is happening. That part is amazing. We have Ace with his helmet back on, trying to take over all of Gatlin City. And that's the only thing he has in mind. He doesn't care who he hurts in the meantime. And that's where he ends up losing his allies. And he fights Captain Chromium? I might have the name wrong, but one of Adrian's dads, who is immune to most of Ace's powers and impervious to harm because he's made of metal. I mean, you can't shoot him. He just pings off of him. And that battle is fascinating because he thinks Adrian is dead, so he is out for a vengeance. He's angry. He's doing his best to get rid of Ace and save the world and get vengeance on what he thinks is his dead son. Of course, Adrian is actually fine, but Adrian has lost his powers. And at this point, everyone knows that Adrian is the Sentinel. Like, that came out earlier in the fight. I should have brought that up. It came out earlier in the fight when Ace got his helmet back. when they were trying to neutralize all the villains from the prison. It came out that Adrian was a Sentinel. So that was also pretty interesting. But again, it's something I felt that it wasn't explored enough. It should have had a bigger impact than it had, because it had been such a huge part of Adrian's personality was keeping the fact that he was a Sentinel hidden. When it came out that he was a Sentinel, it was not explored hardly at all. Like, everyone was just happy that he was safe. It was mostly ignored. And again, it felt false. It was another big part that took me out of the story. Adrian actually ends up losing his powers, along with so many other people, as I mentioned. Again, he acts like it doesn't bother him. Again, that's something that it bothered me throughout the whole story. Every time, they should have cared more. Maybe it's just me. I know that probably wouldn't bother some people, but it drove me crazy. And in the end, it's not Captain Chromium that saves the day. It's not Nova or anybody. It's Max. If you don't remember Max, it's Adrian's adoptive little brother who can absorb everybody's powers. And it ends up stealing them, and it could end up killing them, I believe. And that was interesting to me, because I loved Max. Max seemed like a very underutilized character, and it was nice to see him come in and save the day. Like, no one knew he was coming, but he knew he was needed, and he got to Ace. I don't remember how, but he did get Ace's helmet, and he ends up taking Ace's powers and the powers of every superhero, all of them. Anyone who had powers, he absorbed them all with this helmet on. He had such range that he could take them all in, and he saves the world. Quite literally, little 10-year-old Max saves the world. And that was absolutely magnificent. I loved seeing that. He's such a force for good. And the whole good versus evil, Max was the only, I feel, pure good character. Even though he's absorbed everyone's powers, he doesn't try and keep them. He doesn't use them for good. He gives them all back. It ends up everybody ends up with powers after Max releases this energy into the world. And he takes the helmet off, and he has nothing. Now Max is able to be around the people he loves, the people he cares about. People can touch him and be near him. And it's amazing. Can you imagine this little 10-year-old boy who's never been able to be around more than maybe 2 people, and suddenly he can hug people, he can touch people. I imagine it was overwhelming for him, but it was just an amazing thing. It was nice to see Max, who's the only true good character, get what he deserved, which was happiness. That was awesome. Of course, Ace gets defeated because it's good versus evil. In a YA novel, good's gonna win. That's just how that goes. And Nova discovers that she really is good at heart. And she and Adrian, smoochy face, yada, 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 whatever. Now we get to the part. I was prepared after that battle, because I love the battle. I was prepared to still give this 4 stars. And then we get to the book's epilogue. Now, if you remember Nova's backstory, her parents and her baby sister were murdered by a gang, and Ace came to rescue her. And she was the only one of her family that survived. Now, we found out that that's not true. Ace actually orchestrated her family dying, and the only reason he saved her is because she showed that she had abilities, and he wanted to manipulate her and use her. That happened, but that's not the part that bothered me. 3 books we've gone through. There was anguish about losing her family, and how it was a driving factor on who she was as a person. By the time we get to the epilogue, it's not from Nova's point of view anymore. We're not looking at it through Adrian's eyes, nothing. We're looking at it from another character that we've seen very little of. She pops up every now and then, but she's not there a lot. But it ends up in the epilogue that this character that we don't know much about is Nova's little sister that she thought had died. Okay? Now, I got angry. I genuinely got angry. I'm glad she's not dead. Like, no one should have to lose family, but we'd been led to believe through 3 books that this little girl was dead, and that her death drove who Nova was. And now Nova's off on a float in a parade, smooching on Adrian, everyone loving everything, loving life, right? And her sister is in the crowd and she doesn't know it's her. Her little sister doesn't know who she is. Like she thought she was an orphan. She thought her family had died and she was an orphan and she was raised in an orphanage. It felt bad. Like it was just a setup, it felt like, for Meyer to continue the story from another character's point of view later on. And I absolutely hated that. An epilogue should, at least to me, it should tie together the story. It should give you closure at the end. And this was not closure. This was more questions. And it wasn't questions that I cared about. I don't give a crap about her. I didn't like her character anytime she came up. I don't like that the dead sister, again, I'm glad she's not dead. I don't like that they brought her back. It feels like it was a bid for more money for another series. That sounds horrible of me, but it had nothing to do with the story that we had set up through Renegades, Arch Enemies, and Supernova. That epilogue had nothing to do with it. It was just another setup for another project down the line. And that really bothered me. I wanted to see how people were coping with everyone having powers, even people who didn't before, after Max released the powers into the world. And instead we get, I think her name's Madge. I don't even care. It was wrong. It was a bad way to end the story. It was just, I feel like it was done for profit. And I'm not into it. I don't like it. I didn't like it at all. So that lowered my rating. I was going to do 4 and dropped it down to, I think, 3. I think I'm going to do a 3 on this. Just because the falsehoods I felt from the point of view of the superheroes who lost their powers. And because of that epilogue. It wasn't right. I don't feel like it was done well. But it is what it is, right? Now, is this the first series by Meyer that I enjoyed? I did try and read the Lunar Chronicles with Cinder and Scarlet. I didn't. I read Cinder and part of Scarlet, and I didn't like them, and I put them down. That's all right. I've read Heartless. I really enjoyed that one as well. But this was the first series by Meyers that I really enjoyed. And I felt like I was cheated in Supernova. It didn't get the ending it deserved. The characters were not explored as well as they should have been. I wanted more from it. From a story that felt very character-driven. Very character-driven. The characters themselves weren't, whenever it came to their time of plight and their own internal struggles and how they were going to deal in the world without their powers or whenever they got them back, it wasn't explored at all. And it felt false. And I didn't enjoy that. Those are just my personal opinions on Supernova. I understand a lot of you enjoyed it, and maybe some people enjoyed it less than I did. But they are just personal opinions, and that's okay. Now, if you have any comments about this book, or any others in the series, feel free to hit me up in the comments. And I hope to see you again soon. Have a good day.